Well, hello to everyone. This is Terry Stewart, and we're going to be going over the mandatory exercises and adaptations to strength and balance for the SEL program. So I recommend that you have, if you have like maybe a dining room chair, something that similar that we might use in a class, that you bring that near your computer so you can physically go through these exercises along with me as we go through these. And you may even, if you have a set of dumbbells or anything like that, you may want to just pause our recording here just a second and then bring those in. Now, I think that'll be very helpful. If you're like me, I like to learn by physically doing something, and that helps me to remember better. So if you want to just pause and grab those things, that would be wonderful. So you will hear this over and over that all classes, SEL classes, have 5 components. There are some mandatory exercises that you're going to be doing in every class. So no matter where a person was taking a SEL class, then they would be doing these particular exercises in every single SEL class. There's a mandatory balance component, and then the rest is up to you and your imagination and what you can bring to a class. So the components, you'll see this WOBs. So it is warm up, which is going to consist of 3 to 5 minutes, aerobics, 18 to 20 minutes, balance exercises, and these are mandatory, and they're going to last approximately 10 minutes. Your strength exercises, which are going to be mandatory, and that's 15 to 18 minutes. Then you're going to have a time of stretching and then education. So that generally lasts 8 to 10 minutes. So our warm-up, that lasts, again, the 3 to 5 minutes. This is going to be at a slower pace of music. So it's going to be approximately in that 115 beats per minute. So some examples of this: marching in place, doing knee lifts, some side steps left and right, a heel tap, a toe tap, maybe you're tapping front and back and side, a hamstring curl, perhaps walking around the edge of the classroom, depending on the size of your classroom, some squats over the chair, some shoulder rugs, some shoulder rolls, and some neck exercises. So we want to go through that whole body in those big muscle groups and to get them prepared for exercise. So you may have participants that may be seated in a chair. So you can have a broad range of participants in a class. So if you think of people that you know from age 65 to, I've had someone as old as about 96 or 97 in a class. So there's a broad range of fitness levels within there. So you may have some people that will be seated. So most of these exercises here, you can do those from a chair as well as standing. One little tip in here is you may want to go through and practice some things, and you may want to practice in front of a mirror if you have that opportunity, and time yourself as well. And so that will help you to stay within that 3 to 5 minutes. I know when I started teaching, it was a little bit challenging to make sure I kept that within an hour time frame. So here's some examples of a picture of a seated class. You're going to notice that they have plenty of space in between them, that all of their belongings are underneath their chairs, so you have that safe environment for them to exercise and to warm up in. And you'll see that most of your area is cleared there on the floor. Now, I do see some little containers there on the side. If I were in that classroom, I'd probably move those empty containers off to the side to make sure, if you were walking around the classroom, that nobody could accidentally trip over those. And then here are some examples of warm-up standing. Again, you're going to see that good space between everyone. People have got room to stretch their arms out, they're back behind their chair, and their equipment is safely underneath their chair. We're going to move into the aerobics, and that's going to last 18 to 20 minutes. So your tempo of your music is going to get a little faster. We're going to raise that heart rate up. and that's going to be approximately 125 beats per minute. So some examples of this is to walk briskly around the classroom. Your step touch, you're going to include arms and maybe some side swings, maybe reaching up. Your knee raise, they may touch, with their elbow, or maybe they're doing a little hand tap to their knee, depending on your level of fitness of your group. They may do a little step kick and include their arms, and maybe some walking forwards and backwards and using their arms as well. So as you work and you get to know your group more, you'll be able to see what works for that group. And you'll be able to know their fitness level the more you work with them. So the Borg scale, when you're exercising, you can rate your perception of your exercise. So this is some questions to do. So now, how hard do you think you're working on a scale of 6 to 20? So that is what the Borg scale is. So they don't want to focus on just one factor, for example, like leg pain or your short of breath, but how they feel overall. Their feeling of how hard they're working and their exertion is very important. So not how it compares to other people. And that's something that you want to really bring out, that we're not in competition with one another. Don't look at your neighbor. We're all different, and we're doing the good thing. We're here and we're exercising and moving our body. And so it's going to look different for everyone. So, but just and ask that there's not a right or a wrong answer, but just where are they at? So here is an example of a Borg scale. I like this one because it gives some people some wording to kind of compare how they might feel. So you're going to see that number 6 is no exertion at all. So I may tell my people, you're sitting here, you're sitting in front of the TV, and you're watching Andy Griffith. So you're not exerting any effort at all, other than just sitting there and breathing and watching TV. And then you'll see that progress up into extremely light and very light. So that, say for number 9, for a healthy person, it's like walking slowly at your own pace for some minutes. You'll see that in number 13, moving on up, it's somewhat hard, but it still feels okay to continue. It'll progressing up. So a 17 would feel very strenuous. You can continue, but you have to really push yourself. And number 19 in that red zone, the most strenuous exercise you have ever done. So oftentimes I will give my people an example. You have been climbing 5 or 6 sets of stairs. They just seem like the stairs are endless, and that it would be extremely difficult. You're going to want to ask your participants where they're at several times through the class as you go through. Another method is the talk test. So you're going to ask each of your participants to say their name out loud during the aerobic exercise, such as, what did you have for breakfast? What's your favorite color? There could be a multitude of different questions that you can throw out there. So if they can't talk while they're exercising, the exercise is too hard. And if they could sing, then it's too easy. So any of those simple questions would be really good to ask out there. And again, this can be a good creative way that you add some flavor to your classes by your questions. Now we're going to get into some of our mandatory exercises for balance. So this is going to be approximately 10 minutes. So you're going to see this progression of your classes. So we've warmed up, and then we're going to do our aerobics, and then we're going to move into dynamic balance. And this is going to also serve as a cool down. We're not going to suddenly stop our aerobic exercise. So this will allow participants to bring their heart rate back down to lower that heart rate down. So your music is going to slow down to about approximately 115 beats per minute. And these are our mandatory exercises. They're going to walk slowly with head turns. So I tell my folks, this is kind of like you're going to the grocery store and they move things around and you're looking for a particular ingredient as you're going down the aisle. So they're just doing those head turns from side to side. The second one would be walking and stepping over obstacles. And we all do this, I think. And so I'm bringing that back in. So I always like to give my participants where they might use this in real life. You're somewhere that you're in a parking lot and perhaps you have to step over a curb. You are visiting your family and you have to use their shower and you have to step over into a tub or perhaps a ledge into the shower. Or perhaps you're babysitting or you're keeping the nursery in the church and there's toys in the floor and you have to be able to step over them. The third one is a heel to toe walk, and we're going to practice this forwards and back. So your participants will talk about some variations to do in this, but oftentimes people are in crowds and their feet may have to be more narrow as they walk. I've had people tell me, well, I had to go to a funeral and there was so many people and it was just so crowded and my feet, I was more narrow as I had to walk. Number 4 is that turn a small circle in each direction. So that may be you're out in town and somebody calls your name and you're trying to turn and make that really little sharp turn to see who it was that called your name. And then finally is that sit to stand for 30 seconds. So very important for strength. So that is all our dynamic balance exercises. So you're going to see here some pictures here. So you'll see the heel to toe walk, that perhaps they'll use those arms out to use that to help balance. You'll see in this picture, this lady she has her eyes targeted on probably something in front of her. Your participants may work beside a chair, so perhaps they start and they're working with their fingertips on the chair to kind of gain their confidence level and to build their strength. And you may have that their feet don't start entirely heel and toe, but maybe they're a little wider, and then they work towards improving that. You'll see the sit to stand there, much like we do in our fitness checks. They'll be well familiar with this exercise. So this lady, she's sitting in that very good posture, those hands crossed over her chest, and using all that leg strength to get up. Now we're going to move into balance exercises that are static or standing still. And so these right here are so very important as well. So you'll see that there are 5 of them. So you're going to see a clock sway and with their feet close together, head turns or trunk turns. So this is so critically important for people to work on if they are driving. The heel to toe stand, and you're going to hold that for 15 to 30 seconds. Reaches forward, sideways, in all different directions. And then a single leg stance. So here's our clock sway. So I have people, I tip them, and I'm like, you're maybe looking forward and you're looking down that your precious little grandchild is showing you a picture and you're leaning forward to look at it, or perhaps you're looking down at your flowers in your flower bed. You'll do that to the right and to the left. So we're going around the clock face. So it may be that you're reaching out to pick up, you're going to reach towards your glasses. That may be on your nightstand that's a little further away. And perhaps in that back sway, and I always caution people with this, that maybe they're having to look up, they're looking up to perhaps there's some stairs that they've got to climb and they're kind of looking up towards the stairs. Perhaps they're having to look back up. Maybe it's something on the wall or something like that. So you're going to work that right and left. Head turns. So you'll see that this is independent of the truck turns. So I would have them see if they can keep their shoulders still and observe how far they can turn their head right and left. So this may be, again, this is with driving. This is so very important. And this is important too, that they're able to do this. If they're on a busy roadway and they're having to cross from a sidewalk and going across the sidewalk, the crosswalk in a busy street, this is really important. Then you're going to see the truck turns there and the shoulders are going to go along with it. So again, you're looking at to merge into traffic in a car. So very, very important. We want everybody to be able to do this that's out driving. You're going to see the reaches, reaching out to the side. There's all different ways. I try to bring this and think about everything, and I may have people give me suggestions from my class. So what are things do you reach out for? You're reaching out to pull the cord on a fan or a light switch if you have a pull string on that. So you're reaching up for that. You may be reaching forward towards your dishwasher to pull a dish out. You may be reaching for your laundry. You may reach out to the side. Again, you may be handing something over to someone, or you may have something, maybe there's a table and you've got to reach across over to it. So take that in all different directions. And again, let them, this is a good way to have them participate in class and think about maybe, oh, we're going to pick apples today or peaches, or we're going to reach down and pet the dog. Your next exercise there you'll see is that single leg stance. So I have them come back behind the chair and their fingertips. So some people may need to hold with both hands on the chair. So maybe they have a death grip on that chair. And then maybe as time goes on, our goal would be for them to progress. And so maybe they're just kind of playing the piano, fingers loosely on the chair, and they work back up to maybe they're playing chopsticks with one finger, and then get to a place where they can release their hands. They're building strength in that leg, that standing leg. And you'll see this lady in this picture has beautiful, she has her eye gaze targeted straight forward, so she's not looking down. So she's still staying in very good posture right there. And I have participants, even if they are seated with all of these static exercises, we still want them to do that. So even if they have one leg and they're seated, we still want them to do this. Now there's some additional exercises that you can throw in that will work with balance. So if you have this available, some people may have a ball or not, but you're still going to do all those mandatory exercises before you start throwing in these other things. So that may be throw and catch standing still, throw and catch while they're walking up and down, bouncing the ball standing still, little hand-eye coordination there as well, maybe bounce it against the wall, bounce standing on one leg, bounce walking around in the circle. So there's that's some ways you can have some different flavor to your class. And that depends, again, on the fitness level of your class. Now, moving along, we're going to get into the mandatory strength exercises. So this is just so very critical. This is going to take you 15 to 18 minutes. You'll have a little transition time in here between your balance because your participants are going to need to gather their weights, if they have ankle weights or dumbbells or whatever equipment that you have that they are using there in your facility. So as we go through there, you're going to see your music's about 120 beats a minute. You're going to encourage people, and just some guidelines, to start with no weights, which will allow the muscle tissues to adapt to new movements. It lets them learn what's going on in the class, and it helps them to learn how to properly do the exercise before we start adding weight to that. Then have them progress to using a minimum weight. Too much too soon can lead to injury, which we definitely don't want. So a goal could be for 2 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions with a short rest between sets. They're going to do this slowly, so they're going to lift up for 3 seconds, Then they've got a little hold there, little pause, and then they're going to lower it down. So this allows them to not put momentum into it and use that other force. They're going to just really have to use those muscles to work. Now for your class, you may start, especially if you have a brand new group, that maybe you start out and they do one set of 8 repetitions. So looking at your group, that may be sufficient for when they start. So it'll vary with your groups. So some of the guidelines as well, it should feel hard or very hard. So that 15 to 17 on the Borg scale. It's too heavy if they cannot do 8 repetitions, and it's too light if they can just do 15, and it's just very, very easy. The participants should never hold their breath. So you're going to have to cue this as you go through your class, that to breathe out with the effort. So that's either the lift or the push, and they're going to breathe in as you relax. So I generally will tell my people, okay, you're going to exhale on the hard part and then inhale on the easy part. Another way to put that. And all their movements should be very smooth and very steady. So normal, they may have some muscle soreness and some slight fatigue. And abnormal is they're just exhausted. Their joints are very sore. There's some unpleasant muscle pulling. So they'll probably be able to tell the difference between, okay, this is my muscle that's working, and oh, this is my joint. This doesn't feel right. There should be no pain during their exercise. And you may have to continue to tell your participants this and remind them of this. And if they do have some issue somewhere, encourage them to see you before class or after class to discuss that. So maybe privately you can make sure that they're performing an exercise properly, or perhaps give them an alternative. So progressions and adaptations. So we progress and make things more challenging. That's how our muscles are going to get stronger, is by making it a little bit harder. So you're going to allow the first few sessions to feel pretty easy and let them just kind of, sometimes when people are new to a class, they just need to know what's going on. We all have perhaps been in an exercise class, or maybe any type of class, and you just perhaps, unless you are an extreme extrovert, it may be, you got to see what's going on. All right, so they're going to increase the weight, the amount of weight that is necessary for increasing the strength. When 10 to 15 reps is easy, then it's going to be time to increase the weight. And they're going to increase the weight in approximately 10% increments. So now one way I'll share that I do with my people is, because some people are afraid to increase up the weights. So I'll have them think about, perhaps they have a 1 pound weight, and I'll have them maybe a dumbbell, and I have them sit and think, now what do I have? I may have 1 pound cans of baked beans that I pick up, and they may not think about that it only weighs 1 pound. Or maybe they routinely pick up a 3 pound bag of apples or oranges. 4 pounds would be a half gallon of milk or buttermilk. So you can, relating that to things they do in real life, that may be helpful for them to think. It may take away some of that fear, because it may be something that they're already doing in real life, and they're moving that big iron skillet with that cornbread in it, or that they're cooking in that, and those iron skillets are pretty heavy. So they may be using that, and they may not be interpreting that as those weights that they're working with there. So again, with those exercise adaptation, so what do we mean? So their participants are unable to stand in order to take part in class. These people can work seated. They may be doing more arm movements, but they can also move their feet in varying directions, and particularly on that varying in that aerobic section that they can just move. So the goal would be to progress to a standing version, but it's okay for them to start seated. We have, there are some, we've adapted some mandatory exercises to be done while seated. So we'll be going through those. So that's a beauty of this program, is that people of different fitness levels can come and they can enjoy it and they can get stronger and they can have that social interaction. And it is very wonderful that they can do that. So when will you decide that a participant needs to use adapted exercises? So you'll have that initial assessment. So they're going to be doing a fitness test. Performance during the class. So you can kind of watch, and particularly keep a close eye on people for the first time that they come to class. And I'll just kind of watch and see how they move and what that they are doing. A temporary change in status. You may have had someone that has had an illness and they're coming back and they need to start back slower, or perhaps they have had physical therapy and they have some certain considerations with that, or there's all different things in there that where they might have that might affect that. So they may have some other issues like diabetes or osteoporosis, glaucoma, balance and mobility deficits. You may have someone that has had some deficits due to a stroke. Perhaps they have something like Meniere's disease and have balance issues. I've had someone in a class that was legally blind. So there's all different things in there that you'll want to, that you will utilize that information to help them to adapt their exercise. One thing is maybe they're placing in the class. So you may have someone that's very hard of hearing. And it's interesting that my people that are hard of hearing, that often want to be on the very back row, where it may be a little hard for them to see what I'm doing and definitely to hear my cueing. So sometimes I've had to bring people up and tell them, oh, it's okay. Come up here and sit a little closer to me so you can see really good what I'm doing. And then perhaps you'll be able to hear me a little bit better. Some other reasons for participants to use adapted exercises: they've got a history of falls, or they're really afraid of falling. And typically, if people have had one fall, they're really afraid of falling. So you may start really low with them, help them to feel very safe, and then help them progress and build in their confidence as they build their strength. They may be unable to get out of the chair without the use of their arms. They may have a poor performance on the timed up and go. Typically, it takes longer than 15 seconds for them to perform that. They use a walker or some other type of assistive device. Or they have pain, which restricts activity level. So many things in there that they might adapt. Now, I'll just mention one thing that I've had, someone that has had, that it would be good for them to stand up. They've had someone that went through a very long illness and had come back. And so what we did for her, when I work with my class, I typically have them work behind their chair with plenty of space, very safe area. And for this person, I put a chair in front of them and I put one behind them so they could stand up and have the security if their fingertips needed to go to that chair. But if they tired very quickly and needed to sit down, then that chair was very available right back behind them to sit down. So that kept them safer for a period of time until they built their strength and they no longer needed that. All right, so we're going to go through our strength exercises. So you'll see these 6 exercises. And again, you're going to do these every single class in this order. So we do our warm-up, we do our aerobics, we do our balance section, which we'll do the dynamic balance first, which also serves as a cool down from your aerobics section. And then you're going to do your static balance exercises. And then we're going to move in to these strength exercises. So we'll review the upper body and go over the lower body. But you could interchange this as long as these exercises are included. So some days I may do lower body, sometimes I may do upper body, and sometimes I mix and match them. But you will always have these same exercises. So the first one, bicep curls, triceps extension, arm raise to the side, shoulder flexion, an overhead press, seated crunches, and this is the only exercise that has to be done seated. Otherwise, they can choose which way they prefer. Oftentimes, with my people, is that I will invite them to come to standing, but they don't have to. But I encourage them to stand, so I do it as an invitation. And as I tell them, it's okay if today you don't want to accept my invitation. So we'll go through here. The bicep curl is one of our fitness tests. So you're going to see that this lady is very nicely placed in her chair, or again, you could do this seated. You may have weights on both arms. Now she's doing a single arm. Takes a little longer when you're going through those repetitions if you're only doing one arm at a time. So just be aware of that. That's why it's good to practice this at home and to sit in front of a mirror, watch yourself, and to time yourself as you go through these exercises. So I hope that you are going through these with me right now. So again, this might be done with a dumbbell, or you'll see that she has that weight around her wrist, good for people that might have arthritis in their hands and have trouble gripping a weight in their hand. So her arm is extended to the side and she is curling back up. She's sitting in just beautiful posture. Her eye gaze is straight forward, and she's working, again, that 3 up, a little pause, and then 3 seconds down. So, and you might encourage with all these exercises, I like to teach and educate as I go through, why is this upper body strength important? You need to be able to pick up your groceries. You may pick up a grandchild. You may pick up your laundry. So placing all that in there, I like to know the whys of why I do some things as I exercise. So I like to include that in my classes. Your tricep extension, you're going to see that elbow is pulled up, and the movement is to work back with that hand. So she's working from her hips. She's a little higher than her hips in this picture, and she's working back. So again, telling people we want these triceps really nice and strong because they're your pusher-upper muscles, I tell people. So when you go somewhere and you're in a chair that's maybe lower, or you are on a camping chair where your bottom has to kind of sit a little bit lower, you may need that strength to help you in those triceps to help bring you up. The shoulder arm raise, and a lot of people have a lot of shoulder issues. So you'll see that, again, she's sitting in just fantastic posture. She gets an A+ on posture. And you're going to see that she's raising that arm out to the side. You may see that an adaptation that some people, to make it a little easier, is I may need to put a little bend in that arm as they're lifting it up to the side. They may need to find a little, I call it the sweet spot for people that have shoulder injuries. And this may be one that you may encourage them if they've had some shoulder issues, that perhaps they start and work with, again, no weight, so just working a range of motion, and then they progress to a very light weight. Our next exercise is that shoulder flexion. So she is bringing those arms up. So again, how high someone brings the arms may be depending on if they have some issue there. So I may have people, sometimes we will lift up with our palms facing each other. So we call this in my class the stinky baby lift. So you're lifting, you don't want that stinky baby close to you. So you're lifting him up, and you're gonna hand him off. Or perhaps your palms are facing down as you do this lift. And I say, well, I'm lifting that stinky garbage up now. Very important as people are doing this and need that shoulder strength. And again, you're going to see she is working in beautiful posture. So that's something we always want to work with our people. An overhead press. So She's just lifting those arms up. So you'll see a goal post and then bringing the arms up. Sometimes, again, they'll have to watch that range of motion. Some people may have some limited motion in those shoulders. So this is where you may have to make some adaptations. So again, it may be just starting with some range of motion and progressing up. You know, I had one gentleman one time tell me that he had been a fireman for many years, retired fireman, and had really worked his shoulders a lot and had some shoulder injuries. And as he came to sail and started getting stronger, his observation in a couple of weeks is I can reach up in my cabinet and grab the dishes. So those activities of daily living, that's so very important that we can help people to maintain their independence through things like this. Now, seated crunches, you're going to see that you would have her start with her back away from the back of the chair, and she's going to work back and forwards. So this is what I like to tell my people. Pretend you're at the beauty shop. We probably are the barber shop. We've probably already been there. We're sitting in that chair, getting ready to be leaned back, and that chair goes back. And so it's almost like you're in a backless chair or backless recliner. And then you have pulling those really deep tummy muscles in while not holding their breath. You'll have to cue them to do that. They're going to want to hold their breath here. Movement up. So I like to tell people that pretend like someone, if you're very ticklish, maybe when you were a child, you're very ticklish, and someone is going to come up and just tickle you, and you're going to really tighten those muscles because you don't want them to do that. Or perhaps like you're going to cough. So we want to activate those So here's an example of the bicep curls. Now you're going to see 3 different positions there as people are working. So you might look and just, is there anything in that picture that you might see or you might question with someone? Now I'm looking at you'll see that the 2 ladies on the ends, they have some pretty good posture there. Your lady in the middle is a little more forward over in her chair. So now we know with osteoporosis, some people may be a little more humped forward. So I would cue her to lift in her chest to try to get in a better posture in which to do those bicep curls. But no, there may be people may have some real limitations. And another tool that I found in working with a bicep curl is I might have someone move all the way to the back, so their back is against the back of the chair, and that stops them from swinging their weights and may potentially bring them in to a better position for a few people. So you'll learn your people and you'll give them some options in there. All right, so moving into the lower body. Knee extension, knee flexion, hip extension, side leg raise, and plantar flexion or a toe stand. So all of this lower body strength is so very important to prevent falls. So we're going to start here, and you're going to see that sitting and standing version. Now, again, that upper body, those exercises could be done standing as well as seated. So that may be another additional way that you might make things and progress it to make it a little bit harder, that they're going to stay standing longer and building their endurance in the standing exercises. So knee extension, you're going to, again, this lady gets her A+ for her posture. So you're going to see the seated version. Now, when they're working with weights there on those legs, one thing again is to work in a slow, controlled manner. If you have someone that has a lot of arthritis in the knee, or they're working with a weight that's too heavy for them, they may try to throw that leg like they're a can dancer. So it's a little ballistic move. So we don't want that. So if you will work slow and controlled up and down, then that will help prevent that. I particularly like this exercise seated because I find that more people do perform this a little bit better seated and can focus on what they're working better than standing. So you'll see that she's lifted up. You'll see that hip, she has some hip flexion there, and then she's extending that leg. So if you have people with some poor balance, this may be difficult, and you may see them really throw that knee more. It will be harder for them to perform this slowly. All right, knee flexion. So you're going to see the seated version is that they are pulling that leg back in. And oftentimes I will have people, especially when they're seated, I'll have them put their hand on the muscle that they're working. So if they're working in that knee extension, put your hands on the top of your thighs, those quadriceps, and I want you to feel them working. And then I would do this, maybe put the lady that is seated, put her hand back there on that hamstring there so she can feel that move and pulling that leg back from that seated position. You'll kind of see that as a drawback of that leg. And then standing up, it's just to lift that leg up. So much I will cue them. It's kind of like you're going to wipe mud off the bottom of your shoe. So if you're going to do that, then your heel's going to go towards your bottom. So they're not putting torsion on that foot as they're bringing it back, but it's more of that movement where they're lifting that leg up. A lot of people have difficulty in doing this move. And I also, again, cue where they should be feeling this at, because this may help them discern, oh, maybe I'm not doing that correctly. It's really good also if you have mirrors available. That may be for some exercises that people have difficulty with, that you may have them look in the mirror to see, so they can have an awareness of what their body is doing. Their brain may be telling them one thing and their body's doing something entirely different. Right, and hip flexion, so seated, they're just lifting that knee up. Okay, and then with the standing, now you're going to see that she has a straight leg there. And I have done this where the knee is bent as well. So that would be an adaptation so that they're not swinging that leg again. So a lot of that is depending on your people and the fitness level of your people, and perhaps knee issues. If you see more swinging with the leg and they're unable to do that, slow up, little pause, and slow down. That, again, that's difficult for a lot of people. Hip extension, sitting versus standing. So this one's a little bit more in their glutes, in their bottom there. So you're going to have them, that leg is more straight. Leg back. I like to cue people that this should not hurt their back. It's okay for them to hold on to that chair to get a proper movement. So if they're feeling that a lot in their back, they may decrease their range of motion. They might even set those toes down. They'll still feel those muscles working. And so again, telling them where they should feel that. Now let me go back here 1 second on this hip extension. So in here, you're working on the glutes, and this one is difficult if somebody is seated, they can't draw that leg back in that manner. So what I will generally do if I have someone seated is that I will have them do some glute squeezes. And an interesting thing if you'll have them do, if you're working, say, maybe on the right leg, is to ask them, can you squeeze that right side only? And activate those muscles. So they will be working some muscles there. So that might be they may be able to perceive a difference from the left to the right, showing people where a weakness might be. Moving on to the side leg raise. Okay, now seated, you're going to see that and the lady there on the left side of your screen. Now her position is that she started with that leg, both legs flat on the floor, right straight in front of her, and she is taking her leg out to the side, and you're going to see that her knees and toes, they're going together. So they're staying in the same plane of action. So they're going to have that movement that will keep everything nice and safe. We're going to do something slightly different when they, a little bit different cue that I've seen people get confused on sometimes when they're seated. So when people are standing, you're going to see again, she has a beautiful posture. I need to write her a letter. I think I've said that 50 times so far. But posture is something that they will have. If they can be in good posture, then it's going to cause a lot less joint pain and all of these things and help their body to function the way it's supposed to. Now you're going to see her fingertips are on the chair, and she is taking her foot out to the side. All right, so the knee and toe are staying forward. So they're staying in the same plane of action, but she is not leaning way far over on the side. And she's keeping those toes forward. So that's going to be a point that you're going to want to really work with your participants about those toes, because a great deal of people that I have worked with, that their brain is saying their toes are straight, but their foot is turned out. Do some muscle imbalances that toe is going to want to turn out to the side. And you may demonstrate that to them at the front of a class, to do one with the toes out. I have done this before. I want you to feel one with the toes out. Now, I want you to watch with your toes forward, and I want you to feel the difference, because they may start with their toes forward and then they rotate out by the end. Mirrors, again, are very helpful. We have the room I'm fortunate to work in has a wall of mirrors, and I've actually moved out of the way so they can see themselves as they're working, and to see, are they leaning, and what that foot is doing. So again, that brain may be telling you one thing and the foot's doing, it has totally different idea of what straight is. So helping that with that. Now, let me flip back over here to the lady seated. So if you have some people that are standing and some people are seated, when they hear, the people that are seated, when they hear, oh, keep your toes forward, what they'll try to do is take that knee out and then try to bring their toes forward, which will tweak their knee. So you want to be sure to teach them to keep that knee and those toes in alignment. It's going to look different with you seated than it will when you're standing. This is a great exercise. If they're feeling, this will also help them to work a bit in their core when they're standing if they are not leaning over. All right, so the toe stand and calf raise. So seated. Now you may find some people have, I have a participant that has very severe arthritis in her feet and in her toes. And so she will always come to a toe stand or calf raise to a seated position to make that easier on her feet, because her arthritis is so severe. So you'll see that she's just coming up on those toes and working in that strength. And then you're going to see with the standing, she's doing exactly the same thing, lifting up on the toes. So I like to tell people that, we need to work this. That's strengthening in those calves. You need that for your walking gait. This is going to make you stronger as you walk. Another thing was being that they're working in that with that plantar flexion. So that is, and the way I remember that is, I learned this a long time ago, is that my toes are planted. So my toes are down, like I'm planting them in the dirt. And so you may bring that up with people that that's part of that foot roll as part of their walking gait. They'll help keep them from tripping. All right, some other things are wall push-ups, if you have the wall space to do this, and if you have time. For me, I often do not have time. By the time I've done all the mandatories, and I make sure I do them in the manner that they're supposed to be done, I don't have a lot of time for extra stuff. But I do teach this to do wall push-ups because I think they're an excellent exercise, and people need to have a push in case they need to push a heavy door, if they need to push a heavy buggy, like a grocery cart, if they need to, it may be, I don't know, they're at an amusement park and they're charged with pushing the stroller that has everybody's stuff in it, including they need to push or off their bed. Great exercise there. Then you're going to also see that upright row. You're going to see that as she does that her elbows are out to the side. Again, beautiful posture. And so people pick up things like picking up grocery bags, you're picking up stuff out of the trunk of your car, and that's where that exercise would be very beneficial to people. Again, a squat over the chair. You may have them do that. This is we'll tease about this, that this is our porta potty practice. And you're going to see lunges there. Now, I find lunges are very difficult in a lot of any adult. It doesn't matter what age, in that proper form. Now, as I look at this lady in this picture, I probably don't like this lunge very good, as I see that it looks like she has a lot of shear on that front knee. So that would put a lot of stress on that joint. You can see that her heel is lifted up there and that front foot. And so that's a little bit more difficult to get in that position. But you may have a very fit group that you may be able to perform those safely in and help them to get into proper position. But anyway, that might be something that you might add in. But make sure again, and if you're not sure what that, lunge, you can go in and research that a little bit and see what does that look, or how can I help my people to, I'd like to incorporate this in. So how can I safely do this? Continue to educate yourself. All right. So stretching and education. Oh, this is the best part. I tell people, this is why we do, when we get into this stretching part, that's why we do all the rest of that class. So loss of function and increased fall risk in adults over the age of 70 are directly related to decreased flexibility in the shoulders, the neck, and the spine. Flexibility exercises that increase the range of motion in participants suffering from musculoskeletal, neuromuscular diseases. So like arthritis, boy, that's just medicine for arthritis. Regular gentle stretching helps to decrease chronic pain, and the list goes on and on. So really, stretching is a key to independence. And so again, that may be something that you talk about to people, that you're able to reach down and you're able to tie your shoes, or you're able to brush the back of your hair, or you're able to do the buttons on the back of a shirt. All kinds of different ways. And so again, with that education and why that is important, as I'm always usually that as we get into one, I'm telling people, mosquitoes seem to bite you in the most odd places, and so you want to be able to scratch that itch. All right, so again, you're going to see these are all mandatory. So 8 to 10 minutes in here, starting with the upper body. So you're going to see a neck stretch. So you're going to want to hold these. I usually at least try to hold them 20 to 30 seconds. Again, it just kind of depends on your timing and your class, but this is such an important part of class. Make sure that you allow the 8 to 10 minutes. So you're going to have them look to one side, and then you're going to have them turn to the other side, and they're going to work a little looking down. Everybody's usually pretty good about looking down. And then a little look up, and everybody's range of motion will be a little bit different, and it is okay. Tell them it should not cause any pain. It should feel like a good stretch, but that they are stretching. You'll see a shoulder scratch between the shoulder blades. Now, in a lot of programs, you may see that this stretch is combined. You may have done it in yoga. It's very common in yoga or wherever, where you would clasp both hands back behind you at the same time. But we do this a little differently in SAIL, and to make this safer for our people. So you're going to have them, towards the end of the class, you can oh, like you're going to pat yourself on the back. You come here today. Now, one thing you're going to see, this lady has a nice, again, she has a great posture, so she has some good flexibility. And you're going to see that her head, she's still staying in good posture. So she's not pulling that head forward to try to get her hand back down her back. So I always have participants, okay, once that head, if you feel that head start where you have to make some, you can't hold the head up straight, then that's as far up as that hand goes. You may have them, you know, that's just as far as it's going to go. And then as time goes on, perhaps we'll work on and we'll get a little bit better stretch. And then you're going to see that we'll repeat this, and then we're going to do this on both sides. Each stretch, so these are two separate stretches, and then you're going to have them bring that hand back behind their back, just like they're going to scratch that mosquito bite. Now, a lot of people will have, because they have, so many people I see have shoulder issues, so they're going to do this very safely. And again, this will be one that you're going to want to cue. You should not have any pain in this. So you just go where you can, and maybe your hand stays lower. Maybe your hand doesn't go up as high as the lady it's depicted in this picture. So just have them listen to their body. All right, you're going to see that hand clasp in front. And then the clasp back behind them. So again, seated or standing, these stretches, this can be done seated as well. I actually find that the stretch with doing that, this shoulder scratch and then the hand below, the previous, let me back up here just a second. This one right here that I find, and this is, I didn't expect to find this, but I have found that people seem to be able to do this better in a standing position than seated. So that was something, just a little discovery along the way. All right, so again, you see this clasp in front and clasp behind. So they're getting those good shoulder stretches and that upper back. Scapular retraction. Now, the way I like to do this is sometimes a stretch that you will see with people. I find that people have difficulty with this. And so I have them start out in some W arms. So they're standing in good posture. And then I have them bring those arms up. And then if their head starts to pull forward, that's where I have them stop. Maybe they'll be able to take those fingertips back behind their head. You want to make sure they're not pulling on their neck. So you're just going to watch your participants and see, and make it so it's okay. All right. So this is where this is where you stop at. So they're going to pull those shoulder blades a little bit together. But just make sure that they're not pulling, dropping the head and pulling on that head. And that's something that I see very frequently. So that's a way I found that they can kind of find, where is that place I need to be, and find that sweet spot, I like to call it. All right, you're going to see praying hands here. And so just a little class. This is where I'm always telling my folks, oh, this is where we're happy that we're almost here to the end of the class. We prayed to get through the class, and now we're about through it. Now, one thing that I want to point out is that you may see some people that really scrunch up in their shoulders when they're doing this. So you may have to cue them now. Just keep your shoulders pulled down as they're working on that. And then the little fist and fling. So this is typically how we end our classes, is that we just do our fist and fling, and that we are flinging out blessings to someone or good thoughts. And so this is how we like to end our classes. All right, moving to that lower body, you'll see a quadricep stretch. Now you'll see in the picture on the left that this lady is sitting on the side of her with that knee in the front of the chair, one extended in the front and one on the side. Now, I will tell you that I personally like to do this with them turned to the side. So if she were in this, I would have her face the wall. I would have her put one arm to steady herself on the back of the chair, and then one leg would drop the knee that's lower down, it would be towards the front of the chair. And I do this kind of as a safety thing. So some people I've seen, it almost looks like they're going to rock off the chair. It may depend on your group of people, depending on their fitness level. So this is how I have found it to be a little safer. They can have an arm to secure themselves and they don't tip in that chair. And of course, you will do this on both sides. You'll see that standing. And all she has is she just has that leg bent up. Now, I would not recommend, now you may see this in other exercise programs with quadricep stretches, is grabbing that foot back there. You may have participants that may be able to do that. I do not do that in class. I would have them, if they're standing, just to bend that leg. But really, I prefer to do this stretch seated. I think it's a better stretch. They're secure in it. They can, I just think they can relax into it a little bit better because they're seated and get a really good stretch there and extending up even into those hip flexors. All right, hamstrings. So you're going to see that she is seated. Now, one thing I do for safety is you're going to see she's seated out there a little bit further in her chair. Is that I want to make sure she's not going to tip over in that chair. So they still need to be securely seated. She's pulling her toe back. Now, I have my people, and you're going to see there that she has her hand extended forward. And what I would cue is you're going to reach that hand forward like you're going to shake my hand. Or you're extending it forward. It's not coming towards the foot. So by not doing that, and some of your people, they may be able to touch their feet down there. But that, I think for your people with osteoporosis, that we're not going to do that extreme flexion of coming all the way to the foot and just extend that hand forward. They'll get a great stretch right there. And then you'll see the seated or the standing stretch where she has that toe up, standing up nice and tall. She has just a slight little flexion of a little bend in her hips there as she's holding on to that chair. All right, and her thigh. So you're going to see here, now this is a stretch, again, for people that I have found, my discovery. And the lady that's seated, you're going to see that leg is all the way out to the side. But I have found that some people that have trouble with their knees or a lot of knee arthritis, they have trouble getting into this position. So if they do, I have them come back in, bend that knee, and just open the knee out and keep a bent knee, much like they did in the seated side raise leg. This is a seated version of it, only they're not weighted with this. So that leg is just out to the side. So you may look at your people and see. And then again, you'll see the same stretch standing. This is one that I find people have some difficulty getting into in a standing position. So a few stretches I feel are a little bit better seated. All right, so calves. So she is seated. She's sitting up really nice and tall, and she is working to pull that toe back. And then standing, you'll see that she has her hips forward. She has her front knee is bent just a little bit, and she's keeping that back heel down. So the back leg is straight, but again, the knee is not locked out. And they should feel that stretch there. Your participants should feel that in their calves. So I like to show all my participants seated and standing. So I feel like if they ever have a time, so maybe you have somebody very fit and then they have something go on, so they could do things seated, that they're going to be aware of how to do these stretches, all these exercises. All right, so you want to be sure with that education, you're going to include that in an education piece during the stretches. Now, it may be a bullet point from the SAIL guide. So the big important thing is that you get that education in there. I find sometimes I start class with education, and I am typically, it's probably my nursing background, that I educate as I go all the way through. That SAIL guide is a wonderful tool to go through, and you may find some things in there that's very pertinent. Maybe you start, well, they're all pertinent, but that for a season. So when you get into the winter and there's more colds and flu and those type of things, then maybe that's a time that you bring out those points. Or maybe you have your starting class, or you've been going a few weeks and you want to hit on something about how they need to progress in their weight. So you might bring a point up like in that. I've done, speaking of shoes, we've talked about to make sure people are in, they're not in poor shoes, which can cause falls. So I've actually brought shoes to show them as part of my education. So you want to always make sure that there's so much stuff out on the internet and just out there. So you want to make sure that your educational material that is very solid. So you're going to see, if you're looking online, that you'll see things .gov, .edu, .org, National Council on Aging. There is some of your like Mayo Clinic, some of your big Cleveland Clinic, depending on where you're at, Vanderbilt University, that there's a lot of good education out there. And so that might be something that you'll want to look for those sources. And your people in your classes may bring in articles. So let me give you an example that one of the gentlemen in my class brought in a thing from the AARP that was mentioning exercise, and in those being able to do those thoracic turns, keeping the leg strength to be able to use the brake and the gas. And I thought that was very good. So your participants that may really help them to bring in, help them be watching for those things, educating themselves. And but your cell guide, there's plenty of information in there, and you can just go over it and over it and over it. You might have them bring theirs in, their guide. That may be how you use it, but there's just a lot of wonderful information in there. All right, well, this concludes this section as you go through. So I hope that you have went through and you've done some exercises along with us as I went through this, because there's nothing better than sitting in and doing them yourself, and what do they feel like, and maybe you yourself you've had some type of knee issue or a shoulder issue or something go on. Maybe you've got, like I've got some arthritis in my hands. So that helps me to really understand my participants. And so know that you can always contact us if you have questions. And I just thank you so much for your attention. And I love the CEL program, and this is going to really benefit your participants. One thing I want to add back in here is that you're going to do that warm up, aerobics, dynamic balance, static balance. You're going to go into your strength. So you can do upper or lower body, whichever one you prefer to do first. You're going to do your stretching and your education. You want to use weights, some type of weights, dumbbells, your ankle weights. The ankle weights can be used on the arms. And you're going to only use those during the strength exercise. So you're not going to use weights during aerobics or warm up or any of that, or during your balance. So there's a very specific order that you go through with class, and you're not going to vary from the order, and you're going to make sure that all these mandatory exercises, that you're going to follow those, and you're going to hit that in every class. But there's still plenty of opportunity to add your creativity, and you're going to know your participants, and they're going to have a really wonderful time. And every class is going to be unique to that instructor. So again, thank you so much for your attention, and I hope that you just have a wonderful time teaching this program.